Sometimes people think that it's just automatically there, like it's coming out of the ground at their house, and it's not. It takes a tremendous amount of power to pump water to people's homes in the first place. I think the water cycle is talked about a lot in school. The rain falls and it flows to the river and it goes back, but the actual process of treating water and getting it out into the system is not talked about a whole lot. So there's, I think, a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of how it all happens.
You could have asked me this when I was 24 years old, and I wouldn't have had the first clue to tell you how water got to my tap.
Water is often viewed very carelessly, and having an appreciation for that value instills a little bit of a appreciation that it is a resource that we have here that should be used in a wise manner. A challenge is looking at what sources are available, using those in an efficient manner. It ends up requiring that here in central Indiana, we really need to go tap multiple sources. That leads us to have more treatment facilities than a typical city of this size. When we're dealing with surface waters, there's really 4 lumped categories of things that we are dealing with when we treat the water. One thing is just dirt and solids in the water. If you go have a clear glass and dip it into the White River, it's going to look brown and not like something that you would want to have coming out of your tap. So obviously one of the goals in the treatment process is to remove all of that material and to result in a clear product. Another category that we take a lot of precautions in is related to microorganisms that could be present in the water. So we have to have a very solid disinfection process. Another item that we need to deal with, the whole variety of types of organic compounds that can be present in the water. Some of those can be natural organic compounds. So if you can imagine in the fall when the leaves come off the trees and some of those get washed in the water, a lot of times the water will get a brownish color to it, and a lot of that is tannins or compounds that come off of those leaves as they degrade and break down, as well as we have to be aware of the potential for man-made organic compounds that can get into the streams, and that could be anything from products that people put on their lawns to things that are used by farmers in agriculture, whether it's fertilizers or herbicides. And then the fourth is inorganic compounds. So those are things dissolved in the water that might just be naturally occurring, many of them, like calcium, hardness compounds, iron or manganese, which can cause a discoloration to the water.
The water we use on our lawns or in our agricultural fields has a direct relationship to the water that ends up in our cup or in the cups of our downstream neighbors. Fertilizers, pesticides, dog poop, grass clippings, eroded soil, and other organic materials wash into rivers and reservoirs when it rains or when you water your lawn. Some of these waterways provide drinking water to our communities. Drinking water utilities build expensive treatment systems to remove pollutants and harmful bad-tasting algae. Expensive infrastructure systems then deliver clean water to your house. That's the same water you use to water your lawn, which washes all of those pollutants back into the waterways.
As far as our source of supply, which is groundwater, there are threats to that in terms of contamination. It could be an oil spill. A tanker truck spills 100,000 gallons of oil on the road. There is the potential that that could get into the drinking water supply, and it could basically kill that well. There's also some threat from chemicals that people may use on their yards or other things that could get dumped on the ground.
Water to go completely through the plant. A typical number would probably be 8 to 16 hours. And each of those processes is designed to be more effective for specific things. We have processes to encourage sedimentation of the solids to get those to settle out of the water. As part of that process, we also will remove some of those organic compounds. We do a lot of monitoring of those raw water supplies, in particular for some of those man-made type organic compounds, and Depending on that monitoring, we have the ability to feed a powdered activated carbon, similar to what someone may have if they have a carbon filter that they use at their house, but we're using that same material to remove some of those organic compounds in the front of the treatment process. We also can remove some of those inorganic compounds like the iron and manganese are oxidized and they're removed in the filtering process. And then on the disinfection side for those microorganisms, we have a multiple barrier type of process now. We use chlorine to ensure that those organisms are killed, and then also the filtering process will filter some of those out. Within the last decade, we have added UV disinfection, so ultraviolet light disinfection to all of our surface water treatment plants. So that provides an extra barrier for microbial protection. And that process is at the end of the process after the water has been filtered, so it's a very clear product. So that's the key water treatment process flow there.
There is some limitations on what we can safely treat. This plant wasn't set up to deal with oil. It wasn't set up to deal with wastewater or a sewage type spill. So yeah, protecting the source is very important. There's certainly not going to be any houses built on it. You're not going to have sewer lines running through it. We control the property because we want to protect it. You can see our wells scattered about. You'd be in a residential neighborhood and then there'll be about 4 acres that has nothing on it other than our well house. We've kind of taken some steps there to make sure that that ground's protected.
Within the Indianapolis system, for the piping to supply water from our treatment facilities, so this is finished water out to every customer. If you add up all that mileage, it's a little over 4,400 miles. If you can imagine that, if we were to line all of those pipes up together, that we could have water, move water all the way from here to Los Angeles and back again, just to deliver water within the Indianapolis area. And that's because of how many pipes it takes to run water down, every street, every house, every business. So it's a lot of infrastructure to maintain in the system.
People say water should be free. We have it should be a right, a God-given right. Water should be free. Well, it is free. I do not argue that. It is free. If you want to get a bucket and go down to the creek or the retention pond, or you can get all the water you want. Now, whether it's fit to consume is a whole other story, and that's where the cost of water comes in and the value of water.
Over the course of a year, what we put out on average is somewhere between 10 and 11 million gallons a day. In the winter months, typically we're at 7.5 to 8. That number is growing somewhat because we're adding more customers. In the summertime, we have gone as high as over 24 million gallons a day. People use more water in the summertime for sure, but a large percentage of that is lawn sprinkling. When you jump from 7 million gallons a day to 24, 25 million gallons a day, it's primarily for automatic irrigation. That's a whole other component to what we have to do. They want to water flowers, we get that completely. But to a certain extent anyway, the automatic irrigation has definitely added a whole other level of what we have to do to meet demand. You have to size things appropriately at your plants for the future, as well as the pipes that are out in the system. There's a tremendous amount of work utilities have to do, particularly in growth communities, of making sure you have taken into account what's coming down the road. That might be in a year, or it might be in 10 years or more.
There's a lot of monitoring, and we can go back and look at that data relative to things that challenge water quantity issues, in other words, major drought events and things, and we work that into our planning process. Those events are what have led over time to building the system that we have.
The financial side of that is, so now you've built that system, you need a certain amount of that to happen to make sure that you can pay the bills and pay back any debt that you have to create that system. From a policy standpoint, it's a very difficult thing. People do need to understand more what the ramifications are of wanting to have grass that looks like a golf course in the summertime. Individually, homeowners don't really understand what the cumulative effect of automatic irrigation is.
The decision to maintain a green lawn year-round comes at a cost to both utility ratepayers, our future water security, and our natural environment. As a homeowner, your lawn care decisions might have far-reaching impacts. Lawn irrigation uses more water than any other single household use. During periods of dry weather, lawn watering can significantly deplete our supplies. Water tower drawdowns from watering demands can even impact firefighting capacity and affect water levels in rivers, impacting wildlife and recreation. Some utilities have to build new infrastructure at great cost to meet this peak demand for water. Those costs are often passed on to the user, meaning you are paying more for that green lawn.
Really, I think a key thing for the public is understanding everything that's involved there to get an appreciation for the value of water.
You have to pay to get that water out of the ground, to pump it to the plant, treat it, and then pump it from the plant. You have to store it for fire protection purposes as well as pressure, and then you have to make sure it gets to the customer's tap. All those things cost money. As a society, as a community, we have to be willing, I think, to pay that cost for the health of not only ourselves, our friends, family, but our community, not only now, but moving into the future.
Water is life-giving. Use it, but protect it, and don't waste it. Limit lawn irrigation, 1 or 2 days per week. Consider landscaping with native plants rather than turf grass. If planting turf grass, use drought-tolerant seed varieties. Dispose of household chemicals properly, paints, oils, fertilizer, pesticides. Limit application of chemical products on your lawn. Pick up after pets outside. Conserve water in your house. And be proactive about addressing leaks.